Hi, everyone. I'm Gianna Whitver, co-founder and CEO of the Cybersecurity Marketing Society. We are a group, a community, an events company, a media org, and mostly what we do is we help security marketers be successful however we can. So a lot of you are in the community, you're members. We have about 5,000 marketers at over 1,600 security companies in our membership. And together we share best practices, we help each other with our careers, and we talk about what's going on in the market and the industry. The society has grown from that, from a humble 10 people that we started with in 2022, the 5,000 plus we have today. And along that evolution, we've launched things like webinars with amazing sponsors and amazing people who are willing to share their knowledge and insights with our community. We've launched a podcast and in-person events, 21 virtual meetups a month for any type of marketing in cyber. Whether you're a product marketer, we have a dedicated product marketing call. Whether you are an email marketer, we have one for that in cyber. So we're just here to connect the community and to provide resources. We do industry research on the ROI of various large investments, such as in RSA or Black Hat. And of course, we have Cyber Marketing Con this year. Our conference last year, 700 people came, and this year it'll be in Austin, Texas, November 15th through 18th, and live streamed anywhere. We just launched the agenda. It's on the site as of today. And okay, so we're not here just to do an ad for the society and for our conference. We're here to do our 45-minute content sprint. And I am so excited to announce our speaker today is Mr. David Ebner, my friend, a longtime sponsor and supporter of the society. We've put together, well, mostly David has put together this awesome interactive workshop sprint that we're all going to work on together. And David, so excited to have you on. Can't wait to do this with you. I'm going to have my screen open too and be working alongside you. And yeah, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gianna. And if any of you have been members for multiple years of the society, you're probably tired of seeing me show up on things. You're probably tired of seeing content workshop.
I can never be tired of you, David. You have an MFA in creative writing. You're you're always sharing something very unique point of view and interesting that we can apply to our marketing that sometimes we feel maybe gets a little stuck, right? To do cybersecurity marketing, obviously there's a lot of great work, but sometimes it can feel, and I have been in-house where it feels like a little of the same all the time. So let me just push back on that.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'll take the pushback, and thank you for providing that. We try to just give. That's really our goal, right? At Content Workshop is to provide as much as possible. Give as much of ourselves to the group as we can, and see what value we can share. So, like I said, there's a little QR code here. You feel free to take a little snapshot picture of that. It'll take you to an awesome folder filled with a lot of goodies. We'll talk about those goodies in a little bit as well too. There's more than just that tag along document, but if you want to follow along, that tag along document is helpful. And I did share that in the chat as well. You have to scroll up to the top if you need to click on the link, but you can always just take a picture of this with your phone and get on over to it. So yeah, don't get lost in that folder. There's a good number of things in there where just the tag along documents what's going to help you walk through this presentation. But as Gianna said, this is a 45-minute AI content sprint. I don't even think we're going to take the 45 minutes. That's how fast we're going to sprint through this. But we're going to have time for questions. You're going to work alongside of me. You're going to build some things in AI. Really what this all comes down to is it's not that we all have to move faster. We just have some opportunities too. So as much as this is a sprint, it's okay to take a moment, relax. I know that you probably have a lot of pressure coming your way to adopt a lot of these tools, to figure out a way to be more efficient, to show value constantly. And I'm hoping that this webinar will help you do that. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to toss them in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and just jump into this real quick. On the front end, I just wanted to show you two examples. I know this is probably really small on your screen, but if you can read a little bit of it, that's great. But I wanted to show you two examples of kind of the same-ish prompt that I used in my own system. I use Claude specifically. Of course, you can use the AI of your choice. So when you look at some of these, you're like, oh, that's definitely Claude. That's why. So this is pretty much the same-ish prompt, a little bit of a different output, but each only took me about 5 minutes to put together. Right. And I'm using, again, the same chat for the most part in Claude. I asked it for a content piece for my brand. I didn't tell it what brand because Claude should know me enough to know which brand specifically. It kind of had a hard time with that because we have multiple brands at Content Workshop. But it kind of gave me this, here's something that's interesting that you should write about. And it's this Article 50 thing that's going on in the EU. I'll admit I had not heard of it up to this point in time. So it wasn't really ringing a lot of bells for me as something that should be important to my target audience right now. It did sneak in, as you can see that last bullet point on the left, that there's a cyber specific edge, right? Because it knows that I work a lot with cybersecurity companies. So it wanted to add that little aspect to it. But overall, it's not a bad idea for a piece of content. Not really all that exciting as far as the content is concerned. On the right, we had an idea that was surfaced by AI, not specifically chosen by AI. And this is extremely important in what we'll talk about today, which is where humans belong in the loop, right? We want to turn creativity into part of the process, not eliminate it. And I'll share, of course, where that makes sense today. This came up with something very different. It came up with the 80% problem in cybersecurity content, how to build an activation system instead of one-off prompts. And it's talking about how 80% of people are really not using the full capabilities of AI in marketing, which is what we talk about quite a bit here at Content Workshop. So it's pretty meat hammer for content. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward here. So the things we're going to cover today and that we're going to ask you to do is to think specifically for your brand, right? Like you have to put yourself in the shoes of your brand, which is something you all are very comfortable doing because you do it every single day. We need to challenge ourselves. We need to challenge weak angles. There are a lot of like reused takes, recycled takes, bad angles in content. That's when you read something, you're like, meh. Like that didn't really do much for me, right? That's a poor angle and probably a take that's not very valuable. We're going to challenge that. And we're going to recognize when an idea is worth pursuing and when it's not worth pursuing. There are so many ideas out there and we're getting flooded with them. Not all of them are worth pursuing. My wife tells me all the time when I come up with a new idea, she'll say, David, is that an idea for you or is that an idea for somebody else? And 9 times out of 10, it's an idea for somebody else. It's not something worth my time to pursue. So here's what is going to happen today. We're going to go over a workflow that has been tried and true and we've been using at Content Workshop for over 13 years to develop content. We are a brand storytelling agency. If you haven't heard of us before, brand storytelling means a lot of things, but essentially we take the technology of the day to build a brand storytelling system. Sometimes that is applications that are helpful that we've created. Sometimes it's like the old school manual, like writing of content. Other times it's building an entire application from scratch and an AI ecosystem. So when we talk about these workflows, they really don't change. What just changes is the technology of the day. We're going to diagnose some real examples where you're going to diagnose your own piece, which is going to be a little bit of like self-reflection and self-deprecation, maybe like you keep that inside for yourself, of course. But we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna have some prompts for you to redesign your piece in real time. We have some leave behinds. Again, if you grab this QR code here, or if you go to that link that we shared in the chat, you'll be able to get to this Google folder. I'm assuming I've seen no messages where people are having a hard time getting to it. So that's awesome. You have the AI, the human AI sandwich one pager, which is really cool concept that we came up with at Content Workshop. You have a go, no go checklist for is this idea worth pursuing? Some prompts to kind of like harden your content ideas. There are, again, more 5 creativity prompts to help you kind of generate better angles and better content. There's this really cool context interview file, which was fun to create. Literally, you can take this file. It's an MD file. You go and upload it to the AI of your choice, and it will interview you for your brand. You give it your website, your brand URL, and it'll surmise a bunch of information from that, but also it'll ask you questions and you fill it out. And then the output is a context file that you can take to any project and upload it. And now that project, when you produce content in there, is going to sound more like you, more like your brand, and have a lot better edge for what it produces. So hopefully it gets you moving a lot faster. There is a whole file on what these files don't do. It's important to recognize what AI is good at and what it's not good at, and what we should use it for and what we should not use it for. And there's a whole document in there for that. And then there's this cool diagram for the 3 circles that you'll be able to take away with you, which we'll dive into more here shortly. All right. So now it's time. It's the interactive part of the workshop. Everybody needs to go find one content piece that you've recently drafted or outlined. Now, maybe it's something you've done personally. Maybe it's something that somebody else on your team or wherever you work has done. Go grab it out of your Asana, your Monday, your project management system. Grab that Google Doc, that item that's just the draft or whatever the starting point is. Pull it aside. Have that ready. And then open your favorite AI tool, right? If you're Claude person like me, that's great. Go open it up, the OpenAI, whatever tool of your choice, right? Go ahead and have that open and ready. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. We've got time. You can listen to me as we go along here. All right, so let's dive into this concept of what's worth talking about. This is the major, I would say, issue that most brands have today when they're building content. They're thinking about their brand, how to develop the story of their brand and then showcase their expertise online. What's actually worth talking about is like that blank page problem, right? Like you're staring at a cursor blinking at you and you're like, I know I need a piece. I just don't know what I should be producing right now. So this is designed to help you do that. The first concept is that great content needs to be timely. And when we say timely, I'm thinking of from the point of view of your target audience. It doesn't really matter if it's timely for you. Everything we create, the hero of the journey, the hero of our brand story is always our target audience. It is not us. Okay. That's a very important takeaway that you have to focus on them first and not yourself. So what's happening right now that they're talking about or that's interesting to them? That is the first aspect of great content. The second one is that there's got to be a pain point. It's got to solve a problem. It has to provide advice. This has to be something that your audience struggles with, right? We're not talking about simply informing people. We're talking about educating them here. Right. So that means what are their aspirational goals? What is a problem they have at work every day? How does that overlap with what's timely? So the last one is that it has to be yours, right? You have to own the subject matter, which means you have to be a subject matter expert in whatever you're talking about, right? You have to have earned the right to say something about this topic. Obviously, that's going to have a lot to do with your products and solutions. What are you SMEs about, right? Like that is what we're talking about there. And then of course, if it's in the center of those three pieces, it has the potential to be a great piece of content, which is really exciting. It's really tough to figure this Venn diagram out and find the right pieces. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do that though today, which is pretty exciting. First, let's talk about what happens when one of the circles are missing. The first one is, let's say it's timely and it's painful, but it's not yours. Like I said, this is commodity content. This is information content, right? I'm going to tell you about something I just read, but why are you telling me this? Like, why you? Why should I listen to you is really the question, right? It's just about content that has no standing. Fifth best version of a piece your competitors should have already written, right? So we don't want that. We see a lot of this today with AI. This is AI generating content that doesn't have a context file on your brand, right? Secondly, we have timely and you own it, but it's not a painful concept or pain point for your target audience. We are all guilty of vanity content. I am guilty of it as well too. Unfortunately, your target audience will never be as excited about your content as you are, no matter what. They're never going to love the fact that you just had a new product update as much as you do. They're not going to really be interested in your press releases all that much, I'm sorry to say. That's the quiet part being said out loud, but press releases definitely fall into this bucket quite a bit. I'm not saying don't do them. I'm just saying know where they fit. They fit in the content cycle. And lastly, we have the stuff that's painful and you can own, but it's not timely. This is the evergreen bucket. I'll add a caveat. I do think you should create evergreen content. I'm a big fan of evergreen content because it educates a lot of the fundamental and early career people in our fields, right? It's really important. To this point, Content Workshop has a glossary on our website. Well, why would you ever produce a glossary in the age of AI? Well, somebody might care what we think about this topic or how we define it or why we think it's important. And if it just helps somebody who's beginning their career, then I'm okay with that being all we're doing. Right. But evergreen content does have a place. It's just not every piece of content. Right. Two of these are still painful and yours. Those can change from time to time. Right. But very slightly do the pain points for our target audience actually like fundamentally change. They might grow or new technology might introduce or like create holes and gaps. They don't really change that much though. In what we own, our subject matter expertise, again, can evolve slightly over time, but it's grounded in a foundation of understanding, right? The one thing that does change every day is the fact that it's timely. It's a perishable asset. It will spoil on a shelf if you wait too long to create content about it, right? This is actually the whole reason why Content Workshop, we created this tool called Chatter. And in fact, we didn't create this tool to be a product. We created Chatter because we had clients that we had to stay on top of like what's happening in their industry and with their target audience today, so that when we came to the table for ideation, we had stuff that was present and timely. So we created it for ourselves and then realized it was, beautiful and awesome and had a lot of cool characters like this little robot that keeps popping in and out as you see on the screen. So why not like share that with other people? And that's when it became a product. But it's designed, there's so many tools you can use to do this though as well. And we're going to go over that in a little bit as well. So this is the workflow. And as we go through this, I'd love for y'all to throw in the chat, tell me which of these boxes eats most of your week. Where are you spending most of your time? The request phase, which is like this piece needs to be created. Drafting, the actual creation, review, revision, publish. this is the same process for design as it is for writing, as it were, for generating content. So, you know what? I wonder, Gianna, like, I mean, in the age of AI, I'm going to keep saying that, but I'll put quotes around it. Like, people are probably spending a lot more time editing than drafting. And it's probably because the outputs like are not reaching like a minimally viable product to a point where they feel like they're just rewriting stuff from scratch, right?
I think from my point of view, like I'm doing a lot of review and revise and drafting. I do a lot of drafting too, but the heavy work is in review and revise for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Actually, I'll take that back. Mine is actually somewhere else because I have a lot of great people who are better writers and editors that work here at Content Workshop that spend their time doing that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So some of the folks on the call or on the webinar, they might have like third party writers. They might be working with an agency like Content Workshop, or they might have other teammates who do the drafting. So maybe they're not drafting, they're getting stuff and they're reviewing.
I love hearing that. Like your first draft should be as good as you possibly can make it. We'll keep diving in. Thank you for sharing all of that. So this is the problem with this workflow, which is the workflow pretty much everybody uses, is that we're kind of missing some parts to it, which you probably realized or maybe haven't yet, but it's kind of on the front end about deciding like what is a good idea worth pursuing. Also, what is good and how do you judge what's good enough to ship, to post, to publish, right? Those are tough questions to answer. And a lot of times I feel like we spend a lot of time in these three areas, which everybody kind of mentioned, and not really enough time on the last two, which is really where human creativity can shine in the process. And AI can help us with a few of these steps, right? So that first step, which we believe this is the human AI sandwich, the human creativity has its best effect on the front and back end of this process. That doesn't mean that all human time should be spent on the front and the back end, but AI does allow us the ability, if finely tuned appropriately, to do some of the stuff in the middle. The first part, ideate and brief, we do believe strongly that these should be human influenced. You know, you can be involved with AI to help you recommend, is this idea a good idea or a bad idea? Or like, what's 10 ideas? Let me get started. Let me prime the pump. Perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But deciding what is actually final and good and what you're going to move forward with best involves a human. The briefing process also, when you're building the outline and like what actually goes into it, again, fine to have drafts being done, but inevitably you need an SME or somebody who's an expert on the topic to weigh in on whether or not we're touching the proper points that need to be touched on to differentiate and provide value. And obviously to be correct. That's important too. So a lot of human time on the front end of this. The middle chunk, we've got a lot of great fundamental AI abilities to do these steps. Now, I know a lot of you might enjoy drafting. I do too. I have an MFA in creative writing, as Gianna said. I like writing. So I choose to do that part of the process, even though I know I have built some pretty great agents and skills that can do it pretty well too. But inevitably, the tools are able to do these if they're built properly. Curating is like going out and collecting information about the topic. If you've got a brief, it's great to send somebody out to go look for resources that match that can align with those topics. Drafting, certainly, we know AI can generate text. Is it good or not has everything to do with how you've trained your agents, what tool you're using, the skills you've developed, and whatever QA you've put into place, which is really number 5, is kind of like scoring and doing a mechanism of QA with AI is very helpful. Not deciding if it's good or not, but deciding if it objectively meets the criteria that you've set for a piece. And having a good rubric for that is pretty exciting. So yeah, those are the steps that AI can really do well. Gianna, do you have a question there?
I have lots of questions because score is like new. Score is completely new to me from like this perspective. How are you making like for what every person's like individual company, how should they make a criteria or rubric that an AI can score against?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we usually do is we score based off of the brief. So if we get approval on the brief on an executive level before we start creating anything, that might be a step in the process that people might have the ability to effectively do, might not. But getting executive buy-in or stakeholder approval like as early as possible is really helpful to ensure that you're not going to go down the path of generating a ton of stuff that's not going to make it to publish. That brief being well identified and well informed by SMEs allows you to build a rubric based off of the brief itself. We usually measure drift from brief. We measure, do resources align with the brief that's been put together? We measure quality aspects. We, of course, measure, does this sound like AI wrote it? Does it sound like it's on brand? So a lot of the rubric is about brand voice. and tone and all of those aspects? Is it using the words that we tell it not to use? You can't rely on the drafting mechanism to get it right. You must rely on a secondary step to QA. We'll get to the slide in a second. I'm going to steal its thunder, but we have a rule around here that nobody grades their own homework. So that works really well when it comes to manual content creation, which is what we've done for 13 years. And it works even better with agents, by the way. Agents will tell you that everything they did is great and there's nothing wrong with it when you can see that there's something wrong with it. So we've developed a secondary agent that grades the drafting function. It's a nitpick agent and it grades it based off of the brief. Secondarily, we've also allowed, this is something unique to us, which we found out is how do you get curiosity into the process with agents? Like by nature, these agents aren't supposed to be curious. They're supposed to just give me what I asked for. So we've actually trained our agents to have a certain percentage of time that tokens that it can spend on curiosity, where it just goes down a weird rabbit hole when it's studying a brief and it comes up with ideas that weren't in the brief. But then the grading rubric is allowed to say, hey, that actually improves the piece. Let's keep it in. We've tried to like make this as matching to our ability as humans and what we bring to bear. But you always have to have these little caveats to train against. So sorry, I got off track there a little bit, but again, the rubrics, they can be, you can pick whatever elements are important to you. On brand certainly is one of the big chunks, aligns with the brief. And, we usually have it graded against what a target audience is interested in.
That is so cool, actually. What is the difference between curate and draft stages? They sound the same.
Yeah, great question. And we added the curate stage because we felt like there was something missing between the briefing and drafting stage, which was a separate kind of like scout. We call the agent a scout, which actually goes out and searches specific sources to find out more information that might be missing. And the curate agent finds these things and actually kind of like formats the brief as well as everything that it found into a format in which the drafting agent can accept effectively. So it's turning it into typically JSON files and different things. Like I'm not going to get too technical, but that's what the curate agent does. And it's actually a really important step in the process. We find better content when we do that.
So how much do you use good versus bad examples in your scoring / rubrics, or is the focus more on comparison versus brief and audience needs?
Yeah, we actually don't use good versus bad examples at all in the grading rubric, which I think you're kind of alluding to a degree. We train our drafting, curation, and other agents on what good looks like and what bad looks like. And this is actually a really important differentiator, and I'm glad this was brought up. A lot of people will tell an agent or their own, again, this can happen in chat and in projects. This doesn't have to be in a repo and stuff like that, but they don't tell them that they did a good job, which kind of stinks. We tell them all the time they got something wrong, but we don't tell them why what they got wrong is actually important. So you have to not seek to inform. You have to seek to educate even your agents. Think of them as a junior staff member who you don't want to have to tell all the time how to do this well. Just because they can regurgitate what you say doesn't mean they understand why that's good or bad. So that does happen usually on the more worker agents rather than the grading agents.
How many agents have you built for the 7-step process? We're going to use the AI today. So
yeah, we are going to get to it.
Yeah.
It depends on the output that we're going through this. We're talking about a workflow. Some of it's just like the everyday stuff that's going to be in every piece that we create. There's always going to be a brief function. There's always going to be a draft or design function. There's always going to be a review function. So those three are used every time. You don't really need to have a separate agent for some of those steps. You just must have your QA agent be separate from whatever's creating the asset itself. And the QA agent shouldn't be creating the brief either, by the way. Again, they shouldn't be grading their own homework is kind of the concept or idea. So 3, is probably the minimum. I mean, we've literally built one for every step before and some sub agents, but it's kind of overkill. Honestly, you can do a lot more with skills versus agents. Humans are great at doing a QA after the score has happened. This loop can actually happen between 5 and 6 as well as, after 6. But this is what we're talking about. That loop is learning in the process. And a lot of times what'll happen is the score will come down too low. The nitpick agent will say, nope, this doesn't pass muster. I'm not going to send it to my senior executive, which is the person. I need to send it back to the draft. They need to fix these things first. And that happens. We do that in a loop until it gets a certain score. Then it goes to a human. The human reviews it. They add their own comments of what good looks like, what bad looks like, and then takes it from there. But then also feeds back that information to the loop. Yeah. Humans decide what goes in. AI does the middle. Humans decide what goes out. That's really the AI, human, human AI, AI, human, human. I don't know. Sandwich. That's how it works. So essentially, what we're looking at is measurement is arithmetic. It's math, right? Like a model can check based on math on a rubric. And you can ask your agent to help develop that rubric, honestly. Like tell it what you think it should be included and have it give you back what it thinks is smart. It tells an editor where to look first, certainly based on that score. But approval is judgment, should always stay with humans. It's the creative and discernment part of content generation. That's a human gate for sure every time. Again, as I mentioned, nothing approves its own work, your own homework. Don't ask the chat agent who wrote the idea if it's good. They'll say yes every time. They will really, it's kind of the same way Google, for the most part, used to work. It's not trying to tell you what the correct answer is. It's trying to tell you what it thinks you want to hear, right? The second you start to realize that, the second you have to start putting in safeguards to make sure that you're not just getting told, in a loop what you want to hear. Okay, great. So again, a couple more slides, then we're going to actually create some stuff. But I want you to see the difference between some content that meets some of these criteria and what doesn't, right? So real quick, let's look at this piece. And I'd love to hear in the chat what you all think is missing. Is it missing the timeliness, the painful, or the yours part of this conversation? This article is, you'll see these are all very similar. The first 72 hours, what ransomware response actually looks like beyond the playbook. And we have an angle for the CISO. They usually have an IR plan, right? Far few stress test it. Decision tree, nobody rehearses. The pay, don't pay, reality check, recovery assumptions that fail under load. And then we got some key takeaways here. So let's assume this comes across your desk as a content editor. What is it missing? Does it feel timely? Does it feel like it answers a pain point? Does it feel like it's differentiated to which this couldn't be built by any brand? This is for specifically one brand producing it. It's actually missing a little bit of a timely aspect too, right? Because this is important. Why produce this now? Definitely missing the yours concept though. So let's refine this a little bit. Now tell me what's still missing here. Extortion without encryption, why your backup strategy no longer equals ransomware resilience. We've got some stats here now, right? We have a shift away, the shift in why attackers made it. Encryption appeared 78% in 78% of extortion cases in 2025. So we have some real data now here, which is exciting. We can see a reference to a brand here, which is usually pretty exciting too, because you can now know who's creating it. But we even have our good friends at Unit 42 mentioned here in the middle. So we're getting that yours concept here. We're getting some brand information. You better believe there's going to be a CTA in this thing. But, we're still kind of missing a little bit of a timely aspect. I apologize. I clicked a little too early. Yeah, evergreen. Gianna, you nailed it. Yes. This is evergreen content that we've seen quite a bit of, right? And then finally, this one isn't missing anything. I'll kill the lead here. This is what it looks like when you start to talk about recent articles that align with this information. We know which brand is producing it. We have references. We're backed by data. There's a pain point, an obvious pain point. It's not really hard to find the pain points in cybersecurity. There's an obvious pain point here, right, to cover. This is something that passes the worth talking about test, right? So it's a little bit more dialed in. Now we get to use some AI. Everybody's excited, right? All right. So take the piece that you've created and you're going to choose one of three. You're welcome to ask all three questions if you have time for it. But there are three questions that you're going to ask your AI of the piece. So you need to upload the piece into the AI of choice. You need to share the link if it's going to be just a URL on your website, or if it's a file, upload that file into the chat and then ask one of these three questions. But ask one of the questions of your AI tool of choice. There's a timely question. What's the real thing underneath this? Find me the specific incident number or practitioner objection this is gesturing at. What is this piece actually talking about without saying it? That's important. We have a painful aspect. Who is made uncomfortable by this piece? If the answer is nobody, why would anybody remember it? Oof, that's a harsh take. But we should be asking those questions. What's the part that people aren't saying out loud? That is great content. And yours, what do we know about this that our three closest competitors don't? What have we seen that they haven't? So it's really asking you kind of like, what do you do that differentiates yourself? What data do you have to back up the fact that this is something you are credible to talk about? Right? So ask that of your piece, and whatever it comes back with, these are gaps that are worth exploring to improve your piece. This is exactly the types of questions that your QA agent might ask of the piece.
This also assumes, I guess, David, that you have talked to your AI tool or like put enough into your AI tool that they do understand a little bit about your brand.
Certainly, yeah. And if for some reason you haven't done that, you can feel free to share just in your prompt. Feel free to share a link to your URL to your website and say, "I am X from here." Theoretically, if you've been using this tool, it's gonna know who you it's gonna know who you are and where you work and all that stuff. If you're fresh, and even if you're just using a new chat and it's not in a project, it still should know a lot of this stuff, and that has all to do with context and memory, which we won't get into today. But inevitably, you're welcome to share some more information about your brain if you think it's not gonna know enough.
I input an extraordinarily long blog draft into Claude and it is thinking
Yeah,
and still
it's gonna take a
thinking.
minute, especially depending on what model you're using. If while y'all are waiting for things to spit back at you, I'd love to hear from you which models you choose to use for which steps in the process. Is everybody out there using Fable for everything? Y'all using Fable 5 for everything? If so, I'd love to see your marketing budget. Are you using the new Sonnet 5 to do some work? Is anybody using Haiku? Like what models of GPTs are y'all using? I'd love to hear it.
Do you have a recommendation for the
Yeah.
various?
Yeah, so I'll throw this out there. And again, as you guys are, if you want to share feel free. There's no wrong answers here, right? For the most part, when it's an everyday task, I have to ask myself if I want it to d- do a higher level of discernment of quality. I'm still going to do the final step in that process, but do I need like a brainstorming partner, or do I need a worker bee? If I'm just looking up data or running math problems, which happens a lot, I'm using Haiku, which is a lower model for those of you that aren't familiar with that. Sonnet 5 honestly can do just about anything that you need, which is pretty cool because they really upgraded Sonnet to do quite a bit. And then secondarily, obviously, I use Opus as my main kind of like default, always like in the middle, not like a max or ultra. Like don't you don't need that for this. You're not coding yet, so probably don't need that level of execution. I never use Fable unless there are a couple of instances I'll use it, but like I'm very careful about the context window.
Okay, can I share a little bit
Yeah,
about what? So
please.
I put in, so we had a webinar like a few months ago like about webinars. So we had a webinar on webinars and about how to get your content syndication webinars and your content syndication programs, how to make them more successful. Because it's for a lot of us here, a content syndication is very hard and like the way we've tried it, it hasn't worked out. For a lot of folks, it has worked out. But for folks who have been disappointed, we hosted a webinar on that. And we did a recap of the webinar, and it was very interesting. The clearest thing this piece is stepping around is lead fraud, not lead quality, because a lot of what we discussed was like getting into the contract what you want the leads to be so that you're not disappointed in the program.
Yeah.
And lead fraud is like a super bold way to say that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a spicy take, and it kind of hit me in the face when I saw it. I was like, whoa, lead fraud. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's rough. This is why I said like putting this on a piece that's already created might make you a little squeamish. It's okay. Like we all are just about, we're all works in progress, right? Like we're all just trying to get better.
Claude has become too verbose.
Yeah.
Despite repeated prompting around being concise, all models of Claude give us suggestions that are very long and meander around the point without making it. David, do you have any suggestions for that?
It depends, right? Like you can actually set caps on context, which I would suggest and Valerie in that instance. And this is gonna be easier done in a project than in like the open chat because there's really no rules. You got to think of like chat, projects, code, design. I'm just speaking Claude today. Those are all harnesses, right? Those are all like different things set on side of a very large language model that can do quite a bit, but we have to tell it kind of like what the guardrails are. And so when you're using each of those, it's going to have different guardrails. So the further down the pipe you go, the more guardrails there are. So like, for example, in chat, aren't really a ton of them, and it does want to give you verbose answers. So what I usually do is in a project, I'll say like keep my answers to a minimum token usage. And sometimes I'll tell it specifically how many tokens to respond at maximum. And a lot of times I will train it to be I'll just tell it to be more concise constantly. It has been reaffirmed time and time again that a lot of like everyday users of these tools believe it when it tells you more. And they've been trained, I think, to be as verbose as they are now, unfortunately.
Plus, they want to spend your tokens. I do
They
think
want to kill
that.
those tokens. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, more token. Well, yes, they do. do, because a lot more tokens are used in input than output inevitably, but every output token turns into an input token in a session. So using compacting and essentially giving it some guardrails about token expectation is smart. Best of luck with that. You're going to have a lot more value. You'll have a lot more success if you move to like the coding side and had a repo to set up those guardrails, because they're more likely to be reinstilled every time you use it. Happy to chat more about that off script if you want. But sounds like a lot of people got some good responses. Sorry, I feel like that was a painful experience probably for some of us who created that content directly, or it's representative of our brand. But it'll only make us better. So again, these are the 3 prompts we just went through. Feel free to use them over and over again. And again, feel free to feed them to your rubric of choice. It's very helpful. Really what it comes down to is you don't need a new idea. You need to understand what the missing circle is. A lot of your ideas are good ideas. They're just a little bit too thin to resonate with a target audience. And you can read this. Every day you read articles and you're like, that's okay, but it's not great. I'm not going to remember that, right? Or it never really got to the point. It's a lot of words, but not a lot of meaning, right? Find out what that missing circle is by prompting against it. Add some of these to your rubric for grading. Have to answer these questions. Add them to something that, don't let the curator pass the item to the drafter without having answers to these questions. That's a great place to start. Why wait till QA to answer those questions? It's quite nice.
I like this too. It's a little, just to add in too, it's like kind of the anti-SEO blog writing perspective here. It's like what you're trying to do, David, is be timely. Obviously, there's SEO component to every blog, but like timely and solving a pain. Would you say that ideally after running through this process, like people actually want to read your blog posts?
That's the number one reason why things rank in the first place too, Gianna. It's funny. I've been working in SEO for over 20 years, and the first boss I had in that front, the guy who kind of trained me what SEO meant, just told me to write for humans, not for robots. And this was 20 years ago, which I thought was really interesting. But write to humans, build empathetic stories, care about people, help them, and it will rank because people will read it, people will click on it, people will spend time on it, right? And those behaviors are far more a mechanism for what will rank versus which keyword is where. That stuff's the easy part. Those stakes are like the minimum stakes, like the keywords, you can add in supplemental keywords. Certainly you can target them when you're developing the content, but like you can work in stuff as long as it's relevant. So I would worry less about starting with a keyword, and I would start with what people are talking about. Anyway, on that note, let's do a little exercise on finding the hook. What is worth talking about? Like we said, timely. Like I said, we've got this cool tool, Chatter. I'm going to show you a little bit of it. It's free, by the way, if you want to use it. I'm not trying to sell you Chatter today. And actually, we do. If you want Pro, we have a coupon code for everybody too. But neither here nor there. We're going to look at this really quick, and I'm going to show you 2 ways in which to do it. And it's in the tag along document as well. Finding a live hook, you can easily use Google News for this. I'm going to share this tab instead. If we switched over to Google News for everybody. So here is the Google News, right? Like this is mine briefing from me. It's 90 degrees out here in Pinellas County, by the way. If y'all are wondering what it's like in Florida, it's swampy and it's hot. It gives me a little briefing. Of course, you can save your own content in here. You can use any feed system here. I like content about content marketing, so I have that as a saved topic. It pulls in a lot of topics here. Knowing what is interesting to your target audience does come down to keywords sometimes, but you have to surmise a little bit about like what's happening in the industry. You have to understand what's important to them, not just in their work life, but like in general, right? So it's important to kind of stay on top of the topic du jour, as it were. And you're going to have to read a lot, y'all. If you want to stay timely, you're going to have to read a lot. And I know that's not it takes a lot of time, but y'all are marketers. So like you all like reading anyway, I'm sure. But it does take some time to stay on top of these topics. So just skimming the latest news on a specific topic is extremely helpful on that front. And again, there's a lot of free tools, Feedly. There's a million of them that you can use, right? So setting those up with specific keywords, very helpful to find the right angle. The other way, if you're very interested in checking out Chatter, is you can use Chatter for all that. That's what it was designed for. So you go through an onboarding process, you tell it about your brand. Actually, it surmises a lot about your brand just by having your URL, but you approve all of that. You look at sources, and it develops stories in a feed that align with your target audience, as well as the keywords for your brand, all the things that are important to your brand specifically. So we write a lot of content about content and cybersecurity. So you can see my feed has stuff from Martech series. We have a little bit of Forbes content. Hacker Noon is all over my feed. Shout out to the Hacker Noon folks. They're doing like a really good job on the content front. They're pretty awesome. But a lot of like marketing and business related content. But it's really great to see kind of what might be important right now. We have the ability to sort by like what's recent versus what is relevant. So like higher relevancy scores might be something important for you. Oh, look, we're in Chatter's instance and there's a story from content. Look at that. I promise I didn't plant that. There's a content
Wink,
workshop.
wink.
Yeah, article in there. We've taken the next step with Chatter, which again, we're not going to cover a lot today, but like you can actually select stories and start generating, ideating topics like right here based on your brand, which is pretty cool. So this is just us taking it like down the line for various, clients and things that we want to do. It'll suggest topics, or you can, input your own, build articles and stuff. But all I'm trying to demonstrate here for you is, stay on top of what the trending news is. That you're not going to be able to get that by somebody telling you it's trending. You're literally going to have to go out and read if you want to stay on top of it, because you've got maybe 48 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that. If something really pops that everybody's talking about, that you're going to want to get in front of. So to find the live hook, get yourself a feed and use it and read it every day.
What is the URL for that? So it's chatteragent.ai, right, David?
Chatteragent.ai. It's in the tag-along document. I did throw a link in there, so you're welcome to take it there. And actually, the tag-along document also has the coupon code if you want to use it. If you want to use the pro version, I'll tell you this, we're launching a new pro trial where like everybody starts on pro for free. Feel free to take the coupon code. If your trial runs out, you can, get a discount for keeping to use it, or you can just use it on the free mode. It's completely your call. But the stories feed definitely helps you stay on top of the topics du jour.
The ever-changing cybersecurity landscape.
I know. The ever-changing. Man, I just hate that AI has absorbed the M dash and a lot of hyphens, because I just love those grammatical symbols and use cases. But
AI makes, webinar abstracts the way I used to make them, and now it's like not fair because
I know
they basically learned from me, and now it's like bad.
For free, and you didn't give it permission. Essentially, that topic that I showed you on the front end, these are the two briefs that I used. I just gave it a little bit more context and a context file, and I was able to produce something that was way better for my target audience. These are the 5 prompts that are already in your Drive folder that I shared with you. This is the final test and the hardest one yet, and this is on the tag-along document. If I had to rewrite this so our 3 closest competitors could not publish it with a simple logo swap, what would I need to change? What was the angle before we made this improvement, and what is it after? Fantastic, again, question for your nitpick QA to share and to ask of the piece and to help you grade against. But if you're looking for a little self-deprecation, go ahead and pop this in your AI tool and see what it says. And that is also, again, on the tag-along document. Just keep building, y'all. Use all these assets. Keep working at it. Nobody has this all figured out. It's a weird space, right? It's nascent. It keeps changing, which means everybody who's an expert at it really isn't an expert at it. So don't ever feel like you're behind or you don't know enough. Just keep upskilling. If you have questions, I'm of course here to help. We've done a lot of stuff at Content Workshop. I showed you Chatter a little bit, but like we kind of have these 3 ways of helping people with AI. There's the do it yourself. We have a course that's coming out. I promise it's coming out. We've been working on it for a year, a little AI course that Cybersecurity Marketing Society members will be able to take for free, part 1 at least. We help people kind of like move from projects to a repo and start to work through code, and not just writing code, but using Claude Code to generate content. And then we also build engines from scratch. There's a really cool connector with a lot of the tools that you use today, like Slack and Google Drive, to where you can actually build a content brain and engine where other members of your team can request content via Slack and use AI in which to develop it and serve it up to you. Really cool stuff. Just remember, no amount of AI can rescue a mediocre idea. In fact, if the idea is mediocre, AI is just probably going to make it worse. So use your human creativity on the front end of your content generation.
No, will Chatter support multi-tenant where I can enter client workspaces versus mine? For those, there's probably freelance writers on here or writers on here who do this for clients.
Yes, it can. We just adopt this thing called organization. So you can have an agency like this. Content Workshop is an agency that owns the Chatter account. As an agency, I can add multiple brands, which is pretty cool. Toggle between them, switch between them. All of their feeds are unique and separate. So yeah, that's something we thought about as an agency and we put into the tool. So yes, you can.
Awesome. What is a context file? In the last slide, you were like, "Oh, but put it into the like what is
Oh,
that?"
yeah. So a context file is something that you can use and mostly projects are used in. So like whether it's a custom GPT or a Claude project, essentially it's just kind of like a little bit of information that the project needs to know and to absorb into memory so that every time it produces something, it's using that knowledge. So usually it's stuff about like your brand voice. That's very helpful in a context file. Target keyword phrases are helpful. Your target audience is helpful. Stuff about your brand, all helpful in a context file. And again, if you use that item in the Google Drive, there's a MD file that you literally download and then upload to the chat of your choice, and it'll interview you. It's designed as like kind of mini app that'll interview you about your brand, and then the output will be that context file, so you can get started there.
Awesome. One last thing to say on my end, folks. Come to Cyber Marketing Con. David will be speaking. David, do you have any? Can you give us a glimpse of your talk? Like, give us the quickie. I know you're going to be speaking.
We're going to be talking about AI marketing maturity quite a bit. So, as you probably have noticed on this call, as we started to talk through some of these topics, some of them probably seem fundamental to some of you. Some of them don't seem fundamental. Like I've learned this for the first time today. We're all over the place as a group in a society, and there's plenty of education. But at first, we have to understand kind of like what's expected of us, where we are, and where we need to go. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We are going to talk a ton about stuff like we talked about today, about how to use a lot of these tools effectively to generate content to help you kind of like level up your marketing automation functionality. We're going to talk a lot about AI, and we're going to talk a lot about experiential marketing, which is something we should be talking more about, is like the hand-to-hand marketing. How do you actually stand out at RSA or Black Hat? A little tough when you're on that trade show floor and you're like, oh my gosh, everything is like a casino down here. Everything's like popping. There's colors. So we're going to talk a lot about that.
Love it. I cannot wait to see you at Cyber Marketing Con. Folks, get your ticket now. Prices go up on September 1st. Send me a note if you need help making a case to your whoever approves it, or if you're already going, I hope to see you there. And folks, today we launched a new webinar page on our website. So if you go to cybersecuritymarketingsociety.com, under resources, there is webinars. This webinar will be up for replay in the next like 24 hours. So you'll be able to see it, and we'll send you an email with all the links and the video replay as well. David, thank you so much. This was really good. I love it when you do these. They're excellent.
Great. I'm glad to be here. And again, if you want to reach out to me anytime, feel free. My friendship is always free. I'd be happy to chat with anybody.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for attending. If we didn't hit your questions, we'll come through the chat, and we'll see you at Cyber Marketing Con November 15th through 18th in Austin, Texas, or live streamed wherever you are in the world. And of course, in the Cyber Security Marketing Society Slack. Let us know what else we could do to help you and what other content and resources you'd like to see. Thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
wonderful day.